an hour and a half and an hour and 20 minutes. And this, if I would have read the whole Go Show, which I'm going to, but not today. I'll read it. Don't forget, we're going to go to Japan, so there's going to be this is the only meeting for January.
Yes.
So between now and our meeting for the first week of February, I will read that whole Go Show, and I'll read the next lecture's Go Show, so that when we come back in February, we finish number 8, One-Eyed Turtle, okay? And then hopefully we will have been able to locate our volume 7s while we're in Japan. So we'll bring them back, so then we just go right into that. So we're on lecture number 7, the letter to the sage Nichimyo. And all I'll be doing is reading the gray boxes without making comments, so that, when I read the Go Show, it's got something to say. Bottom line is, letter to the sage Nichimyo is found on page 321 of the Writings of Nichiren Daishonin, Volume 1. Does anybody remember if we've ever discussed this person? When? Who? How? Where? Can you? That's just, There's another Go Show that was written to her that we've already studied. If you go, it's a long time ago now, by now. If you go back to Volume 1 of Teachings for Victory, the supremacy of the law is written to the sage Nichimyo. Okay, so you have already read it. Anybody that's watching on video, you can go back and look for. It's I think it's number 3. Well, it's the third one. But it's the first volume had 3 sections for each of the 4 Go Shows. So the supremacy of the law has already been read, and I'm going to read the whole Go Show this week after we've already done this lecture. All right. So going to the gray box and starting the lecture on page 85 of volume 6 of Teachings for Victory, Go Show number 7. Letter to the sage Nichimyo, winning in life through striving for Kosen Rufu with an unflagging seeking spirit in faith. Now what's that? What's an unflagging seeking spirit? An unflagging seeking spirit. It's an expression, actually. It's an English expression, so I wouldn't understand. Again, unflagging means that it never wavers. Yeah. It never wavers. Okay. So an unwavering seeking spirit is what he's talking about here. Winning in life. So this is a life strategy as it relates to your practice as a bodhisattva of the earth. This isn't just about an event. This is about the culmination of all of your efforts, right? You attain Buddhahood in your present form. That's what we're all shooting for, right? Okay. So continuing on page 85, in the gray box. Once there was an ascetic named Aspiration for the Law. For 12 years he traveled from country to country in search of the teachings of a thus come one. During that time, none of the 3 treasures, the Buddha, the law, and the order, were to be found. Nevertheless, the ascetic continued his quest for Buddhism as desperately as one who is thirsty seeks water, or as a starving person looks for food. Continues then on that was from page 321, then jumps to page 323. The Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law consists of 8 volumes. Reading these 8 volumes is, in effect, equal to reading 16, for the sutra was expounded by Shakyamuni Buddha and verified by Many Treasures Buddha. The 16 volumes, in turn, represent innumerable volumes, for the Buddhas of the 10 directions verified their truth. In the same way, each character of the sutra equals 2, for it was uttered by Shakyamuni and confirmed by Many Treasures. Again, a single character equals innumerable others, for the validity of the sutra was attested to by the Buddhas of the 10 directions, which how many of them were there? Countless. It was not just 10. Okay. The character Myo was uttered by 2 tongues. the tongues of Shakyamuni and many treasures. The tongues of these two Buddhas are like an 8-petaled lotus flower, one petal overlapping another, on which rests a jewel, the character of Myo. Bound as we common mortals are by earthly desires, we can instantly attain the same virtues as Shakyamuni Buddha, for we receive all the benefits that he accumulated. The sutra reads, hoping to make all persons equal to me without any distinction between us. This means that those who believe in and practice the Lotus Sutra are equal to Shakyamuni Buddha, Nichiren says. Okay? A calf begotten by an ox king will become an ox king. It will never become a lion king. A cub sired by a lion king will become a lion king. It will never become a human king or heavenly king. Now, the votaries of the Lotus Sutra are the children of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings. As the sutra states, the living beings in it are all my children. It is not difficult for them to become kings of the law, just as Shakyamuni did. Then going on to page 324 and 325. The Lotus Sutra, however, contains such phrases as honestly discarding expedient means, all that you, Shakyamuni, have expounded is the truth, honest and upright, gentle in intent, and gentle, peaceful, honest and upright. All of those were quotations. Those who believe in this sutra, therefore, must have minds that are as straight as a taut bowstring or a carpenter's inking pen. You are the foremost votary of the Lotus Sutra among women of Japan. He's talking about the sage Nichimyo now, who this letter is written to. Therefore, following the example of Bodhisattva never disparaging, I bestow on you the Buddhist name, Sage Nichimyo. From Kamakura in Sagami province to the northern province of Sado is a journey of more than 1,000 ri over treacherous mountains and raging seas. There are sudden onslaughts of wind and rain. Bandits lurk in the mountains and pirates lie in wait on the sea. The people at every stage and every post town are as bestial as dogs or tigers, and you must have felt as though you were undergoing the sufferings of the three evil paths in this life. Continuing on page 87 of volume 6, the lecture from President Ikeda. Lecture. My mentor, Second Soka Gakkai President Josei Toda, was always delighted by young people's questions arising from their spirit to seek Buddhism. Sounds like Mr. Matsuoka to me. Even if he was very tired, when a youth asked him something related to Buddhist study, his eyes would sparkle and he would offer a very clear answer based on the profound principles of Nichiren Buddhism. He would often say with a smile that he could never resist the seeking of a spirit of youth. He also regularly urged young people to read good books and to ponder things deeply. Okay? I fondly recall how he spoke of the need for youth to strive continually to improve and expand themselves. In this view, by acquiring the habit of reading and thinking deeply, the Soka Gakkai youth could become trailblazers of their generation capable of building a strong society. He wanted us to become accomplished leaders who could rise to that challenge. But what's the significant thing that he just said in that paragraph? Let me reread it and emphasize what I think needs to be emphasized. President Toda, because that's who he's talking about, also regularly urged young people to read good books and to ponder things deeply. Now, we know from having already studied this, what kinds of things did President Toda avail himself to make available and to express it and try and get the young people that were beginning to chant interested in? President Ikeda has already talked about this. President Toda's training was very broad. He didn't say, read the Gosho, okay, and think deeply. He said, read good books. Like President Ikeda is constantly referring to famous authors of famous texts that have messages about humanity, okay, that are real and that are solvent within Buddhism. I mean, there's nothing in conflict at all with any of the kinds of things that he really discusses, because they're philosophical perspectives that are relevant, okay? So when he's saying, think deeply, what is he talking about? When we read the Gosho, what should we do? Where do we do our deep thinking there? Deep thinking really best occurs in front of the Gohonzon, no matter what you're doing, okay? So if you're going to read Tolstoy and you want to think about some of the wild shit that he says and the deep and meaningful and correct things he's saying, your chanting Daimoku will bring the wisdom out to have that actual perception start to manifest and percolate. But not if you don't make an effort for it to. If you just go autopilot all the time, you read shit, it goes in one ear, it goes in one brain cell and out the other. You can't even remember if we've ever read about Lady Nichimyo. The Gohonzon is the Gosho is very complicated. Okay? So we must always think deeply about what we're reading. That's the only way you can get into the depths of what it's saying as your wisdom accumulates and becomes more and more manifest after the years and years go by. I mean, how I perceive the Gohonzon and this Buddhism is not the same as I did when I first began. Okay? Much of it came from reading what I already knew to be true from my life, from President Ikeda, but in a manner that I had never heard it expressed really specifically in English before, okay? And I had to ponder it because there were times when, well, is that really what I was, is that the same training, you know, is there, no. And I've then been, that thinking deeply allowed me to always conjoin that understanding. Okay, so that when people say, wow, you got a handle on the Gosho, it hasn't happened because I'm so smart. It's happened because I've made a steady effort to do it. Okay, and I haven't ever questioned whether or not President Ikeda has the wisdom to be correct, just like I don't question whether Nichiren has the wisdom to be correct. I constantly think more deeply to be able to connect the dots that I already know and to have that then expand my perspective and understanding of what the correct teaching is. And then what comes out of my mouth is from Tom. Okay? But that's my job. My job is to articulate this. Your job is to articulate this. Your job is to articulate this. All of us must articulate it in the manner that's not only meaningful to us, but that's meaningful to the people that we're trying to articulate it to. Okay? Because as bodhisattvas of the earth, we are master articulators. We know how we're greatly skilled in the gift of being able to make distinctions. We can make these things make sense and make them verifiable and validate their truth. Okay? We become people of wisdom. All right? So again, I'll read that paragraph again and keep going. He also regularly urged young people to read good books and to ponder things deeply. I fondly recall how he spoke of the need for youth to strive continually to improve and expand themselves. That means continually reading and bringing in information into your life so that you can discern it as the Buddha that you already are. Okay? But being the Buddha as you already are doesn't automatically instill you with all of this perception and real truth that you need to pass on. He says, in this view, and expand themselves, because that's what we're supposed to be doing. We're supposed to be expanding ourselves to attain Buddhahood in our present form, right? He says, in his view, in President Toda's view, by acquiring the habit of reading and thinking deeply, which he instilled in all of those young members that surrounded him back in that time, the Soka Gakkai youth could become trailblazers of their generation, capable of building a strong society, which is what they did. They all ended up following President Ikeda when he became the third president, and they're all the predication of the foundation that we're talking about and working off of right now. All of those big buildings in Tokyo, they're the ones that built them, okay? He wanted us to become accomplished leaders who could rise to that challenge, to be able to do Kosen Rufu yourself. This is really about becoming the equal to Daisaku Ikeda. Okay, is he a Buddha? Yes. What's his desire then? To make all of us equal to himself. And that's what he's trying to tune you in on the front end of what he's going to be saying in this lecture. Okay, so then continuing page 87, second column. Nichiren Daishonin also valued the questions posed to him. It's the basis of the freaking Gosho. Okay? As we can see when reading his writings. For instance, responding to a question about the Buddhist teachings from a woman, he writes, "For you to inquire about the Lotus Sutra and ask its meaning is a rare source of good fortune." Continuing on page 88, first column. Earnestly seeking the Buddhist teachings is a cause. Earnestly seeking the Buddhist teachings. What is that? That's called study. Faith, practice, and study, right? Earnestly seeking the Buddhist teachings is a cause that implants great good fortune. What does implants great good fortune mean? It establishes karmically our future, okay? Is the cause that implants great good fortune in our lives. It establishes the fortune that we're able to express in our future because that isn't a gift. We either created fortune or we didn't create fortune, and our life expresses it. In terms of our Buddhist practice, we not only elevate our own state of life, but also illuminate those around us with the wisdom of Buddhism. Why? Because if we're practicing sincerely and we're doing everything that I just talked about, we're on the path to attaining Buddhahood in our present form. We're fulfilling our mission as Bodhisattvas of the earth, which is to become Buddhas in our present form. Okay? He's saying wisdom is a wellspring of hope. That's what experience as a practitioner gives you, is that experience to know what to expect so that you can encourage others as to what they should expect. Seeking spirit is a driving force for victory. Wanting to understand is the basis of finally understanding. If you don't express that desire, you'll never take the action necessary to manifest it. 88, first column. To seek his teachings, one woman made the long journey from Kamakura to Sado Island. May I have a tissue? Yes. His place of exile. The Daishonin bestowed upon this most sincere and dedicated disciple the title of sage, naming her Sage Nichimyo, Son Wonderful. And by the way, did she make that trip by herself when she went to see him on Sado Island? No matter how you view it, her seeking spirit was such that she had no choice but to bring her infant daughter with her. Oh. Okay? And while other people might go, you took a little kid on that, what kind of a mother are you? No, that Daishonin said, you just assured both of your eternal lives. Okay? I can't really even get into it. You'll hear him talk about it. It was not the wrong thing to do. It was the right thing to do. Right. She could not trust her husband. Okay? She'd already split up with him. Okay? She was a single mother. In this chapter, we will study Nichiren's letter to the sage Nichimyo and learn just how delighted he was to have a disciple who so ardently sought his teachings. In addition to learning from the Daishonin spirit, let us also turn our attention to the Buddha's wish and the efforts of his disciples to act in concert with that wish. All right? Examples of seeking the Buddhist teachings at the risk of one's own life. And that's not begrudging your life, okay? So she literally did that. Once, going back to the Gosho, once there was an ascetic named Aspiration for the Law. For 12 years, he traveled from country to country in search of the teachings of a thus come one, or Buddha. During that time, none of the three treasures, the Buddha, the law, and the order, were to be found. They didn't exist yet. Nevertheless, the ascetic continued his quest for Buddhism as desperately as one who is thirsty seeks water, or as a starving person looks for food. Now, how could he be looking for Buddhism if Buddhism doesn't really exist? Seeking Buddhism is he's seeking the truth of life. He's seeking the correct understanding of the validation of the absolute manner in which all things transpire. Okay, which is what Nichimyo Renge-kyo is. That's what Buddhism is. It's the teaching of the truth. Okay, so going on page 88, second column, below after the Gosho stops, he says, it was almost too amazing to be true. President, the Daishonin says in, I think it's from the Supremacy of the Law. Was it? Hang on. Where is the? I think I've just got it here. When I say that he wrote to her twice. Pardon me. Here we go. Supremacy of the Law. Yes. That's from that Gosho. He says it was almost too amazing to be true. He says when he looked up and he saw that she'd come all the way to Sado Island with her daughter. He said the Daishonin wrote these words to the mother of Oto, okay, which is the original name of that Gosho. They express his own admonition or his own astonishment and deep emotion in response to his disciples' wholehearted resolve to travel, despite the personal risk, all the way to the remote island of Sado to visit him in exile. Today, it is thought that sage Nichimyo and the mother of Oto were the same person. The Daishonin repeatedly praises the incredible journey she made to seek his teachings. A letter to the sage Nichimyo was written on May 25th, 1272, while the Daishonin was on Sado. Most of the letter is devoted to citing stories of the practices undertaken by Shakyamuni Buddha in past lifetimes, as well as by others seeking the Buddhist teachings. He concludes by praising Nichimyo's seeking spirit as unprecedented, surpassing even that of those earlier practitioners. In addition, he highlights the ultimate teaching of the Lotus Sutra that enables all people to attain Buddhahood, and he explains the practice for upholding this teaching. The first example offered is the story of an ascetic named Aspiration for the Law, who was willing to give his life in pursuit of the Buddhist teachings. Aspiration for the Law sought Buddhism as intently as a thirsty person seeks water when he came upon a Brahmin. The Brahmin said he would teach him a verse of a Buddhist teaching if he would record it by using his skin as paper, one of his bones as a writing brush, and his blood as ink. Aspiration for the Law did as the Brahmin asked and prepared to write down the verse, but at that moment the Brahmin vanished. Aspiration for the Law fell to the ground and gazed up to the heavens in shock and grief. Suddenly a Buddha appeared, and in response to the ascetic's sincere seeking spirit, taught him a profound teaching. Upon hearing it, Aspiration for the Law immediately attained Buddhahood. The Daishonin then goes on to cite other examples of Shakyamuni's bodhisattva practice in past lifetimes. He also shares the famous story of the boy Snow Mountains, who offers his body, that's Seisen Doshi, right? Who offers his body as food for a demon in order to hear a Buddhist teaching. Also, as examples from the sutras of those who were willing to risk even their lives to practice Buddhism, the Daishonin cites Bodhisattva Medicine King, Bodhisattva Never Disparaging, and King Suzudan. So when I read the Gosho, you'll hear all those stories. He's going to reference them anyhow. The importance of practice appropriate to the time, and that's the whole point. The Buddhist scripture that Aspiration for the Law was given by that Buddha that appeared is not something from Hinayana or Mahayana Buddhism, okay? And they've got Hinayana contexts. So, all right, the importance of practice appropriate to the time. So just like it was appropriate for there to be a time when Hinayana was practiced, and then ultimately it gave way to Mahayana, okay? And Mahayana gave way broadly to the practice of the Lotus Sutra, which gave way to the teachings of Nichiren. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. So you can see very clearly that this is something that is in a constant process, okay? Mm-hmm. Not now that we've got Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, though. We're at the end of the line of what's necessary. Now it's time for the Bodhisattvas of the earth to appear and to manifest the wisdom of their existences for the sake of all the others, to get them to chant Nam-myoho Renge-kyo as disciples of the original teacher, Nichiren. Mm. The importance of, because we're in Mappo. Mappo doesn't have an end, okay? All these other time periods have had an end and it ended, all right? The importance of practice appropriate to the time. I would like to confirm one point here. President Ikeda says, before we get too much further, I want to confuse people. The Daishonin makes it clear that the practices of aspiration for the law, like peeling off your skin and using your bones and blood to write with, and the Boy Snow Mountains, which, the Daishonin makes it clear that the practices of the aspiration for the law and the Boy Snow Mountains, such as peeling off one's skin to make paper or giving one's body to be devoured by a demon, are not the practices appropriate to the latter day, our present age. In the same letter, he writes, if there were no paper in Japan, then you should peel off your skin. If the Lotus Sutra had not yet been introduced to our country and a single demon were to appear who knew it, then you should offer your body to him. These practices were necessary at the time, but the Daishonin continues, of what use is it to peel off our skin when the country has an abundant supply of heavy paper? As Mr. Toda said in one lecture, if we need paper and pen, we can buy such items at a store. You have to do what is appropriate at the time. Now, what was appropriate at the time for the sage Nichimyo was to go ahead and grab her infant daughter and go jam to go see her mentor, her Buddha, Nichiren. He says, you have to do what is appropriate to the time. He said, otherwise it's not Buddhist practice. It doesn't really count if it isn't part of the seeking of the truth for the sake of not only yourself but others, then it's not the Buddhist practice. And there should be no limit when you'll know when that right time is. Mr. Toda often quoted the words of his mentor, the first Soka Gakkai president, Tanesaburo Makaguchi, stressing that we must not act in ways that run counter to value. We must value our lives. Is exactly what he's talking about there. Buddhism is a teaching for creating value and the basis of how the Soka Gakkai got started. That was the predication of Tanesaburo Makaguchi's own enlightenment, if you will. Buddhism is a teaching for creating value. It is important that we always, also, when we create value, we change our karma. Okay, that's how we manifest Buddhahood in our present form. We create value till we get there, okay? Chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is creating value. So that's all we do, essentially, from the time we start practicing, when we're practicing correctly and sincerely. That's what we're always doing every day, day by day, day by day. We're creating value toward the great ultimate value of attainment of Buddhahood in our present form, all right? It is important that we always remember the purpose of our actions, okay? And was he trying to qualify there? What is the purpose of our actions? Huh? Kosen Rufu. We're bodhisattvas of the earth. It's not just, he's talking about, we must always remember that we don't just practice to get benefits. That's what he just said. Yeah. Buddhism, faith in the mystic law, exists so that all people, regardless of their capacity, because there's no limit based on capacity, right? There's superior capacity, there's middle capacity, there's lesser capacity, but there's always capacity, all right? Buddhism, faith in the mystic law, exists so that all people can create value in the form of happiness and peace. So regardless of that capacity, you can chant Nam Myoho Renge Kyo, and everybody receives the same effect from that. A lesser capacity versus a greater capacity does not increase the value of the daimoku. Right? Mm-hmm. Do you understand? Okay. Right. For example, the principle of transforming karma, which is Ganken Ogo, right, exists to create value in the form of hope, even amid the greatest adversity. We deliberately create the appropriate karma to manifest the lessons in our life that we then help teach others. The principle of the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, which is what? 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, each in Insansen, which reveals the inherent dignity of all people. Why does it reveal the inherent dignity of all people? Because it qualifies Buddhahoods even in evil people. Yeah. Okay? Exists, and women, and everywhere. Which reveals the inherent dignity of all people. It exists to create value in the form of trust and harmony in a society afflicted by hostility and suspicion. By doing what? Everybody's absolutely equal to everybody else. Everybody absolutely is equal to the Buddha. Okay? True Buddhist leaders teach the wisdom of Buddhism, that we're all the same, required by the age and appropriate and practice appropriate to the time, and the practice appropriate to the time. We might have all started out doing Gongyo specifically a certain way, but that's been modified since then, right? Appropriate to this time is now the Soka Gakkai marching forward toward Kosen Rufu without being held back by anything. Page 90, first column. The Lotus Sutra is the universal teaching for all ages, okay? So now, then when he's saying there is, again, what is he qualifying? Is he saying everybody should go get the 28th chapter Lotus Sutra and read it? No, what's he talking about when he says the Lotus Sutra is the universal teaching for all ages? He's really speaking of the Buddhism of sowing. He's really talking about the Lotus Sutra as perceived and understood by Nichiren. Okay, because what are we doing? We're aspiring to be of the same mind as Nichiren. Right. Right? So, okay, so going back to the Gosho. The Lotus Sutra is the universal teaching for all ages, because he's going to say one of my favorite things here. I've said it a million times, but now you're going to hear President Ikeda say it. And get me off the hook for constantly saying it myself. Okay. The Lotus Sutra is the universal teaching for all ages. The Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law consists of 8 volumes from the Gosho. Reading these 8 volumes is in effect equal to reading 16, for the sutra was expounded by Shakyamuni Buddha and verified by many treasures Buddha. The 16 volumes in turn represent innumerable volumes, for the Buddhas of the 10 directions verified their truth. In the same way, each character comprising the words in the sutra equals 2, for it was uttered by Shakyamuni and confirmed by many treasures. Again, a single character equals innumerable others, for the validity of the sutra was attested to by the Buddhas of the 10 directions. The character Myo, wonderful or mystic, was uttered by 2 tongues, the tongues of Shakyamuni and many treasures. The tongues of these 2 Buddhas are like an 8-petaled lotus flower, one petal overlapping another, on which rests a jewel, the character of Myo. Mystic. The region of the unfathomable that Nam-myoho Renge Kyo actually is. Page 90. It's beyond your understanding. It's beyond the capacity to understand, but you can understand it. But you understand it with your life. You don't understand it with your mind. You understand it with your heart, I should say, okay? You don't understand it with your brain, okay? So, page 90, first column. The Lotus Sutra comprises 8 volumes, but here the Daishonin says that reading the 8 volumes is actually reading 16 volumes, Because as I've talked about before, there's lots of Lotus Sutras, right? Okay. This is because the Lotus Sutra is the teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha and also the teaching of many treasures Buddha. In addition, the Buddhas of the 10 directions appear in the Lotus Sutra. As such, a single word or character of the Lotus Sutra is actually innumerable words or characters. Okay? Another way of saying this is that the Lotus Sutra is not the teaching of Shakyamuni Buddha alone. Okay? Because like I've said, his dad was doing the same thing, burning torch, all of them. Okay? Up to this point in the letter, the Daishonin has introduced several examples of practice. Of course, burning torch was Shakyamuni in past life, so bad. Up to this point in the letter, Daishonin has introduced several examples of practitioners who ardently sought the teachings of Buddhism. As I told you, you'll hear that when we read the Gosho. He also explains precisely what Buddhist teaching enabled them to attain Buddhahood. For example, aspiration for the law attained Buddhahood through the verse, practice what accords with the law, do not practice what contradicts it. One who practices the law will dwell in peace and security, both in this life and in the next. Okay? In Chinese, this verse consists of 20 characters. In one past lifetime as a bodhisattva, Shakyamuni attained enlightenment through the following teaching. The thus come one is enlightened to the truth of nirvana and has forever freed himself from the sufferings of birth and death. Anyone who wholeheartedly listens to him will surely obtain immeasurable joy. This is also 20 characters long in Chinese. And Shakyamuni's told this story, okay? And in the other sutras. And the teachings by which Bodhisattva, never disparaging, attained Buddhahood was the famous 24-character sutra, which is in the Lotus Sutra, right? I have profound reverence for you. I would never dare treat you with disparagement or arrogance. Why? Because you will all practice the Bodhisattva way and then be able to attain Buddhahood. Though the way the teaching was presented differed from age to age, each Buddha taught a form of the Lotus Sutra appropriate to the time. The Lotus Sutra, which is what we're doing. The Lotus Sutra also mentions a Lotus Sutra of the Buddha Sun Moon Bright. Like I told you, if you've read it, and we've all read it, so we know this, right? We got the Lotus Sutra of the Buddha Sun Moon Bright, a Lotus Sutra of the Buddha Great Universal Wisdom Excellence, as I've said, and a Lotus Sutra of the Buddha Awesome Sound King. These are all separate mentions of the Lotus Sutra in the Lotus Sutra by different people. Again, it couldn't be the same Lotus, it couldn't be the same text. All right? Mr. Toda referred to the 28-chapter Lotus Sutra expounded by Shakyamuni. Okay, let me calm down. Mr. Toda referred to the 28-chapter Lotus Sutra expounded by Shakyamuni, the treatise Great Concentration and Insight written by the great teacher Tentai, the Makashikan, and the Law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo revealed by Nichiren Daishonin as 3 kinds of Lotus Sutra. Okay? That's why the Daishonin is constantly referring to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and the Lotus Sutra as being the same thing. Okay? He said the Lotus Sutra is expressed differently depending on the particular Buddha. When the Daishonin expresses the Lotus Sutra, he expresses it as Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? He says the Lotus Sutra is expressed differently depending on the particular Buddha, the time and the capacity of the people. Because Shakyamuni qualifies in the Lotus Sutra that the other voice hearers, cause awakened ones, couldn't cut it. It would have to be the bodhisattvas of the earth that would have the capacity, right? The single character Myo is the ultimate teaching for all Buddhists, which is what the Daishonin has said from day one. Page 91, first column. especially in the evil age of the latter day of the law, to relieve people of suffering and guide them to enlightenment, it is essential to teach the great law that enables individuals to transform their inner state of life and become Buddhas in their present form. The key lies in each person awakening to, which is a realization on your part as an individual, awakening to and drawing forth from within the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings. Where does that phrase come from? On Buddhahood in this lifetime. Okay, the very first Gosho. Okay, so the deal has never changed from the very beginning. It's been the same from the beginning. Let me start again. The single character Myo is the ultimate teaching of all Buddhas, especially in the evil age of the latter day of the law, to relieve people of suffering and guide them to enlightenment. It is essential to teach the great law that enables individuals to transform their inner state from delusion to enlightenment, become Buddhas. The key lies in each person awakening to and drawing forth from within the mystic truth that is originally inherent in all living beings, which is to become a Buddha in your present form. In other words, the truth that potential, as vast as the universe, lives within us. We actually manifest Buddhahood. It's not just happy talk, right? Okay, bottom of page 91, first column. All living beings have an inner life state of absolute worth and dignity, because everyone has the Buddha nature. Everyone has the same life state as a Buddha, the compassionate nature to nurture all things, the wisdom to illuminate people's darkness, and the courage to battle ignorance. Therefore, all people are absolutely noble and worthy of respect. And when they bring forth the life state equal to the Buddha, they all become Buddhas. By revealing the path to enlightenment for all people, Nichiren Buddhism imparts hope and courage to everyone. Everyone without exception, there are no exceptions, has the innate capacity and power to overcome adversity. So it doesn't matter who the person is or what they're like. Awakening to this one point is the essence of faith in Nichiren Buddhism. Without this realization, as I said, it's a realization, people will seek the law and the Buddha outside themselves, clinging to externals like high priests or great temples or other grandiosity that seems beyond or greater than themselves, okay? And pinning their hopes on miracles because their prayers are not always answered. They don't have the correct practice to be able to have that guarantee because they don't manifest the life state of Buddhahood. And that's what answers all your prayers. Okay? It's you. It's you. It's not something outside of you. Appearing in the latter day, middle of page 91, where such externally focused faith, appearing in the latter day where such externally focused faith was prevalent. What's he talking about there? Faith in things outside of my life, being the powers that control and affect and make, my life. No, that's that. Appearing in the latter day when such externally focused faith as pinning their hopes on miracles, okay, rather than manifesting the power of their own life, okay, was prevalent, which is still today, right? Now is the latter day, correct? Yeah. Nichiren taught the great law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, the great law that makes us all equal to the Buddha. He established, that would be the same as Christianity making you equal to Jesus or God, and I don't believe that really occurs according to that religion, because he's the Son. Nichiren taught the great law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. He established the means by which all people could tap their infinite potential through chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo and create happiness for themselves and others with a life force equal to that of a Buddha because they're bringing forth their inherent nature of Buddhahood. The single character myo is an immeasurable treasure. It's unfathomable. All Buddhas originate from the single character myo, or wonderful, of the Lotus Sutra Myoho Rengekyo, declares the Daishonin. The single character myo has the power to change poison into medicine. It has the power to transform the three paths of earthly desires, karma, and suffering into the three virtues of dharma, body, wisdom, and emancipation. It facilitates the flip from delusion to enlightenment. Those three things are exactly the same, just the deluded aspect and the enlightened aspect. Likewise, the very last line on page 91, second column. Likewise, Devadatta's attainment though an evil person, and the Dragon King's daughter's attainment of Buddhahood in her present form, were each a blessing or benefit of the single character myo, says the Daishonin. Pardon me. All right. Yeah. As a result, a woman who upholds the single character myo has nothing to fear, even in the midst of an evil and corrupt world. And the Daishonin knew that by Sage Nichimyo coming to visit him with her infant daughter, that the infant daughter was safe. Okay? So it was never a concern of like, well, why would you have done that? He saw it for the true essence of what was involved. The Daishonin taught Sage Nichimyo his great conviction that the truth sought by all bodhisattvas of former ages described in the sutras was Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. He taught her that all of this is Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. This was no doubt a source of boundless courage for Sage Nichimyo, who lived in a troubled society in the evil age of the latter day. The Daishonin then goes on to assert that based on the Buddhist teaching of the mystic law, the Sage Nichimyo is certain to attain Buddhahood. And then it goes on to explain the concept of embracing the Gohonzon is in itself attaining enlightenment. Middle of the first column, page 92. Bound as we common mortals are by earthly desires, this is from the Gosho, we can instantly attain the same virtues as Shakyamuni Buddha, for we receive all the benefits that he accumulated. The sutra reads, hoping to make all persons equal to me without any distinction between us. This means that those who believe in, that's having faith, and practice, that's taking action. This means that those who believe in and practice the Lotus Sutra are equal to Shakyamuni Buddha. A calf begotten by an ox king will become an ox king. It will never become a lion king. A cub sired by a lion king will become a lion king. It will never become a human king or heavenly king. Now the votaries, practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, are the children of Shakyamuni Buddha, the Lord of Teachings. As the sutra states, the living beings in it are all my children. It is not difficult for them to become kings of the law, just as Shakyamuni Buddha did. That Daishonin is saying too in this Gosho. It's not in quotation. Okay, pardon me. Let me go back. Now the votaries, practitioners of the Lotus Sutra are the children of Shakyamuni Buddha, Lord of Teachings, as the sutra states. The living beings in it are my children, quote unquote. It is not difficult for them to become kings of the law, just as Shakyamuni Buddha did, says the Daishonin continuing. Second column, page 92. The bodhisattvas mentioned in this letter, okay, like aspiration for whatever the guy that peeled off his skin. Okay, the bodhisattvas mentioned in this letter had practiced the 6 paramitas, even bodhisattva never disparaging, right? Or 6 practices for attaining enlightenment, which were necessary for you to attain Buddhism, to attain Buddhahood. Pursuing a path that required countless eons to achieve that goal, which was the whole point of Hinayana and Mahayana Buddhism, versus the Buddhism of sowing, which is we can do it in a single lifetime. Those other ones require multiple lifetimes. In contrast, the Daishonin established the way to attain Buddhahood through the principle that embracing, literally accepting and upholding, the Gohonzon is in itself observing one's own mind or attaining enlightenment. In the object of devotion for observing the mind, he writes, Shakyamuni's practices and the virtues he consequently attained are all contained within the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo. And again, if you go to point 20 here, it says point 20. All that is the footnote saying he says Myoho Renge-kyo all the time when he's talking about Nam Myoho Renge-kyo. They're interchangeable. Don't get confused, which is what I keep saying too. Okay, so it says, Shakyamuni's practices and the virtues he consequently attained are all contained within the 5 characters of Myoho Renge-kyo, or the 7 characters of Nam Myoho Renge-kyo. If we believe and uphold in these 5 characters or 7 characters, we will naturally be granted the same benefits as he was. That is, by embracing Myoho Renge-kyo or Nam Myoho Renge-kyo, we can attain Buddhahood. Actually, again, not or Nam Myoho Renge-kyo. By embracing Nam Myoho Renge-kyo is what this is actually saying. We can attain Buddhahood without having to practice the 6 paramitas. All right? Hence, in his letter to Nichimyo, he writes, we can instantly attain the same benefits, virtues or benefits as Shakyamuni Buddha, for we receive all the benefits that he accumulated. Top of page 93, first column. Any ordinary mortal living in the latter day of the law, an evil age steeped in the 5 impurities, can attain Buddhahood. That statement may seem simple, but it actually represents a revolutionary teaching. The Daishonin established a Buddhism for the people through which all can attain Buddhahood. This was also Shakyamuni's original wish. The Daishonin confirms this point by discussing Shakyamuni's hope to enable all people to attain the same life status of Buddhahood as he attained. The wish of the Buddha, middle of first column, page 93. He writes, the sutra reads, hoping to make all persons equal to me without any distinction between us. This means that those who believe in and practice the Lotus Sutra are equal to Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay? Appearing in expedient means, the sutra's 2nd chapter, the passage, hoping to make all persons equal to me without any distinctions between us, is the essence of the sutra. It expresses the Buddha's wish and embodies his infinite compassion to enable everyone to attain enlightenment just as he has. It is a profoundly significant passage, clearly indicating why Shakyamuni preached the Lotus Sutra. A Buddha always wishes for the happiness of the people. This is true not only of Shakyamuni, but of all Buddhas. The Lotus Sutra states, the original vow of the Buddhas, plural, was that the Buddha way, which they themselves practice, should be shared universally among living beings so that they too may likewise attain this way. Pardon me. Continuing, page 93, 2nd column. After Shakyamuni casts off his transient status as the Buddha who had attained enlightenment for the first time in India and reveals his true identity as the Buddha who has attained enlightenment in the distant past, he once again expresses his wish in the closing passage that we recite daily during Gongyo. And you all know this. At all times I think to myself, how can I cause living beings to gain entry into the unsurpassed way and quickly acquire the body of a Buddha? Okay. This passage, which the Daishonin calls the Buddha's compassionate vow, is Shakyamuni's fundamental wish. Therefore, no matter how earnestly people engage, this is very cool because this is important and I emphasize it to you constantly. Okay, so he's saying here, every day we do Gongyo and we finish it up and we think about these 4 lines from the sutra. This is Shakyamuni expressing this. At all times I think to myself, how can I cause living beings to gain entry into the unsurpassed way and quickly acquire the body of a Buddha? Who also thinks that way? The bodhisattvas of the earth, who are also equal to Shakyamuni Buddha. Okay, and he just qualified we're equal to Shakyamuni Buddha. So now he's going to say, if you ain't doing that, you ain't going to be no equal. All right? Middle of page 93, 2nd column. This passage, which the Daishonin calls the Buddha's compassionate vow, is Shakyamuni's fundamental wish. Therefore, no matter how earnestly people engage in Buddhist practice, they will not fulfill the objective of Buddhism unless they become equal to Shakyamuni Buddha, unless they become Buddhas in their present form. You can't go to a temple and support a priest throughout your whole life and never try to advance and never worry about Kosen Rufu at all times, I think to myself, and attain Buddhahood in your present form. Doesn't make even any sense. Okay? Continuing last paragraph on page 93, second column. In this letter, Nichiren writes, a cub sired by a lion king will become a lion king. And regarding the practitioners of the Lotus Sutra, he writes, it is not difficult for them to become kings of the law, just as Shakyamuni Buddha did, because they are equal to Shakyamuni Buddha. The Buddha refers to all living beings as his children or children of the Buddha to help them become Buddhas. Page 94. Okay? Because when we start out, we can't take seriously that we are also the Buddha. Okay? I don't know anybody I've ever seen go, oh, okay, cool. I buy that 100%, man, 100%. Okay? However, if they remain children forever, the Buddha as the parent has failed to fulfill his mission. Okay? Because if you always look at mom and dad, I can tell you as parents, mom and dad, mom and dad. Okay? At some point in time, you got to become mom and dad. Right? And everything changes. And the manner and the truth of what you perceived life as also modifies to that reality. Okay? So, the importance of the oneness of mentor and disciple, page 94, first column. Next, and we're almost there, guys. Next, the Daishonin relates the stories of ideal rulers of ancient China, King Yao and King Shun. They both abdicated their thrones not to their own children, who lacked the virtue of being good to one's parents, but to outstanding individuals from among the people who excelled in this virtue. He says, commoners became royalty in a day. Just as a commoner can become a king in his present life, so can an ordinary person become a Buddha instantly. This is the heart of the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life, the mutual possession of the 10 worlds, the fact that you're already a Buddha exactly as you are. Mr. Makaguchi underlined this passage in his personal copy of the Daishonin's writings. The Daishonin points out here that these outstanding kings did not appoint their royal sons to succeed them to the throne, as was the custom. Rather, they chose their successors based on the criterion of whether they were good sons and daughters. If we were to read this passage in terms of our Buddhist practice, whether we can become a Buddha instantly ultimately hinges on whether we have faith. Faith, 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 faith. The central pillar, page 94, of the doctrine of 3,000 realms in a single moment of life is the mutual possession of the 10 worlds. In particular, it's the principle that Buddhahood is also inherent in the world of humanity. But knowing in theory that we are all Buddhas and actually manifesting the state of Buddhahood in our lives are two entirely different matters. I'll say it again. But knowing in theory that we are all Buddhas and actually manifesting the state of Buddhahood in our own lives are two entirely different matters. If you don't find this difficult, then you're not manifesting the state of Buddhahood. This is where the importance of the oneness of mentor and disciple comes in to help you in having the capacity to make the transition from being a child, to being a parent, okay? A teacher, a mentor. The mentor cares above all for the happiness of the disciples and for all humanity because he sees the hope for all humanity in those disciples. The mentor is ultimately dedicated to the great vow to enable everyone to attain enlightenment because he's a cool dude. The mentor is a Buddha, right? The disciples, for their part, must rouse the same commitment as their mentor. They must also have that same broad-mindedness and that same inclusive aspect of desiring this wonderful element to be shared equally among all people. If they just content themselves with basking in in the warm light of the mentor's compassionate teaching, if they just sit around President Toda's desk and listen and go, or whoever, it doesn't matter, okay? You all must become mentors. That's what I'm actually saying to you right now. They won't be able, in a real sense, to enter the way to becoming a Buddha. This is because people cannot attain genuine happiness without taking action to tap the potential that resides within them. Okay? What is he talking about there, though? The attainment of Buddhahood in your present form. He's saying this is because people cannot attain genuine happiness, that's Buddhism in your present form, without taking personal action to tap the potential that resides within in them, to tap that potential to be able to manifest that as a reality, not as a theoretical, an actual Ichinen Sansen. Okay? If the mentor alone shines as an outstanding presence, and the disciples simply look to the mentor to bestow happiness or enlightenment upon them, then the Buddha's hope of making all people equal to him cannot be realized. Okay? Had I not been chanting all along to be the Buddha, I've never thought about sitting here and telling anybody else about it. Okay? But again, that's what propelled me to study and to keep seeking a deeper understanding. So again, this at all times I think to myself, I don't want to go so far as to say I've thought that way, but by continuing, by never giving up, by constantly aspiring to understand more. I'm reading the Gosho, I'm reading the Lotus Sutra, I'm reading everything, I'm reading the whole dictionary. That is the same thing, constantly thinking, okay, over the course of your life. If the mentor alone shines as an outstanding presence and the disciples simply look to the mentor to bestow happiness or enlightenment upon them, then the Buddha's hope of making all people equal to him cannot be realized, because they all have to become mentors, or whatever they're finding out is going to stop there with them. The disciples must each make the same vow as the mentor and in the same spirit to spread it powerfully, to start the lead of the same kind, and powerfully start to lead the same kind of life. And powerfully start to lead the same kind of life, where they're really studying not for their own edification, but for the sake of becoming capable in helping other people understand the correct teaching correctly. Yes. This is the life described by the Daishonin as being of the same mind as Nichiren. So when I throw that around, it's pretty deep stuff, because it's basically saying, I'm behaving as Nichiren Daishonin in his absence. I'm a Buddha just like, the same Buddhahood is shared by all. Yes. Okay? It is the practice of disciples who strive in a spirit of oneness with their mentor. The oneness with the mentor is the fact that you are an extension of the mentor. Yes. You are one with the mentor. You're preaching the same law of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo. You're going through the same difficulties. Yes. You're going through the same processes of attainment. Okay? The wish to enable all people to equally attain this life state of Buddhahood can produce true value when only when disciples stand up with the same determination, same spirit as the mentor. So if you've got any other angle on why you want to become a Buddha, because you think that's going to make you rich, you're thinking about your future lives, you're trying to set yourself up. If it isn't out of compassion, you're never going to get there in the first place. Okay? So you better love everybody, because it's talking about enable all people, not just all white people, all black people, all Asian people, all people that you agree with, all people of the same political party you're in, all your family. It's everybody. All right? Only when they have the same determination, same spirit as the mentor, because the Daishonin didn't make any exceptions either. And obviously the wonderful people of Japan didn't make any exceptions. They shared this with all of us. Yes. Okay? When the great vow of the mentor and the individual vow of each disciple uniting in response match, Then and only then is the wish for everyone to equally attain enlightenment made a reality. What matters is the emergence of as many disciples as possible. Okay, so this is automatically saying what? What did that just automatically say? It's not going to be possible for everybody. Okay, the disciples are the ones that are going to decide whether or not they merit that through their actions, through their behavior. When the great vow of the mentor and the individual vow of each disciple uniting in response match, then and only then is the wish for everyone to equally attain enlightenment made a reality. What matters is the emergence of as many disciples as possible, as many specks of dirt that you can crowd onto that fingernail, who aspire to become equal to the Buddha, who aspire to become equal to the Buddha. So if you don't aspire to become equal to the Buddha, you cannot become equal to the Buddha. Okay, because the Buddha wants to become the Buddha, because the Buddha's mission is to make everyone else a Buddha. So this desire really is a karmic desire from the original state to manifest the original state of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo for all to see, without any distinction between them. What matters is the emergence of as many disciples as possible who aspire to become equal to the Buddha without any distinction between them, to become equal to Nichiren without any distinction between you and him. You're a bodhisattva of the earth for real, okay? And you're a disciple of the original teacher for real. With the same vow as the Buddha, they stand up and encourage many others to become equal to Shakyamuni Buddha. This grand revolution of the people is the reason for the existence of the Lotus Sutra as a teaching for all humanity. And I dare say we are manifesting exactly what this is talking about around the table right now. The virtue of honesty and sincerity. Page 95, first column, from the Gosho. The Lotus Sutra, however, contains such phrases as honestly discarding expedient means, all that, and quote unquote, quote, all that you, Shakyamuni, have expounded is the truth, unquote, quote, honest and upright, gentle in intent, unquote, and gentle, peaceful, honest, and upright, unquote. Those who believe in this sutra, therefore, must have minds that are as straight as a taut bowstring or a carpenter's inking line. You are the foremost votary of the Lotus Sutra among the women of Japan. Therefore, following the example of Bodhisattva never disparaging, I bestow on you the Buddhist name, Sage Nichimyo. Second column, page 95. Next, the Daishonin mentions the journeys of Xuanzang and the great teacher Dengyo, also known as Saicho, in search of the Buddhist teachings. These were all men, ancients, worthies, and sages. He says, never have I heard of a woman who journeyed 1,000 ri in search of Buddhism as you did. He lauds Saint Nichimyo's journey to Sado to seek his teachings as writing a new page in the annals of Buddhism, because you've shown that females are certainly the equal of males. It is an achievement unparalleled among women of the latter day. He says, ranking with the Dragon King's daughter's instantaneous attainment of enlightenment in her present form, and this nun Mahaprajan Japati, receiving a prediction of future enlightenment from the Buddha. Both incidents described in the Lotus Sutra. In the above passage, the Daishonin stresses the virtue of honesty and sincerity taught in the Lotus Sutra. He quotes the Lotus Sutra passages, honestly discarding expedient means. And next, all that you, Shakyamuni, have expounded is the truth. And next, honest and upright, gentle in intent. And next, gentle, peaceful, honest, and upright. These passages refer to abandoning one's attachments to the provisional sutras. Pardon me. These passages refer to abandoning one's attachments to the provisional sutras expounded before the Lotus Sutra, accepting the truth of the Lotus Sutra, attested to by many treasures, Buddha, and sincerely believing that one is always together with the Buddha who strives eternally for the happiness of all living beings. The Dharma nature itself. The Daishonin says that those who believe in the Lotus Sutra must be honest and upright. Because Buddhism aims to make all people equal to the Buddha, those who honestly and sincerely persevere in faith will surely bring forth the expansive life state of the Buddha from within their lives. The Daishonin must have recognized the sage Nichimyo's actions embodied this essence of the practice of the Lotus Sutra. Her putting her life on the line to journey to Sadhu to seek his teachings was the behavior of a steadfast and noble practitioner of the Lotus Sutra. She also visited him at Manobu. This is why he praised her, declaring, "You are the foremost votary of the Lotus Sutra among the women of Japan." As individuals, we have put our vow for Kosen Rufu into action in our own unique ways. Let's say it again. None of us do it the same.
Right.
I do it the way I'm doing it. None of you should do it. I mean, you should do it naturally from your Buddha nature. Let your Buddha nature express what you have to do. And as individuals, we put our vow for Kosen Rufu into action in our own unique ways. By its very nature, like again, not all of us do it by speaking and articulating. Some of us support. It's various, okay? Yeah. We put our vow for Kosen Rufu into action in our own unique ways. By its very nature, a vow is personal and voluntary. As our individual circumstances differ naturally, our actions will also differ. So we don't qualify one another based on who's doing the talking and who's doing the listening. Everything's equal. Right. All right? But flowing through everything we do is our commitment equally as disciples to strive alongside our mentor, the original teacher, standing up of our own accord because of our Buddha nature to uphold the Lotus Sutra's profound principle that all people are Buddhas and to engage in the practice of helping all people become Buddhas. All right? On the bottom page 96, first column. As disciples, we propagate the mystic law in the same manner and spirit as our mentor, as Nichiren did, Shakabuku. As long as we are equally committed to valuing and wholeheartedly encouraging each person, so long as we are equally committed to valuing and wholeheartedly encouraging each person. In other words, we're not making distinctions between individuals. We don't just encourage people we like. We encourage anyone and everyone that needs encouragement. We are striving in a spirit of oneness with our mentor. It was probably not only because of her dedication, second column, page 96. It was probably not only because of her dedication that the Daishonin commended sage Nichimyo. Likely, he also sensed her commitment to share his struggles no matter what. That's why he praised her as a woman who believes in the Buddha's true words and lauds her spirited dedication as a female votary of the Lotus Sutra. That's a quote. As a female votary of the Lotus Sutra. The Daishonin stresses it is the heart that is important. And ordinary people keep in mind the words earnest resolve and thereby become Buddhas. A letter to the lay nun Myoichi contains the famous words, winter always turns to spring. In that letter, the Daishonin tells the lay nun that her late husband, who dedicated his life to the Lotus Sutra, is no different from the boy Snow Mountains, who was ready to lay down his life to gain the Buddhist teachings and definitely attained Buddhahood as an ordinary mortal. In Letter to the Sage Nichimyo, he also promises that Shakyamuni Buddha, many treasures Buddha, the Buddhas of the 10 directions who are Shakyamuni's emanations, great bodhisattvas such as superior practices and boundless practices, Brahme, Chakra, and the 4 heavenly kings, will all protect a woman who upholds and dedicates her life to the mystic law. Buddhism exists for ordinary people striving their hardest in this world. This is why the Daishonin was resolved to always protect the children of the Buddha. Such action constitutes the genuine path of a truly humanistic Buddhist teaching. Page 97, going back to the Gosho, the Daishonin's profound awareness of his disciples' feelings. From Kamakura in Sagami province to the northern province of Sado is a journey of more than 1,000 ri over treacherous mountains and raging seas. There are sudden onslaughts of wind and rain. Bandits lurk in the mountains and pirates lie in wait on the sea. The people at every stage and every post town are as bestial as dogs or tigers, and you must have felt as though you were undergoing the sufferings of three evil paths, the worlds of hell, hunger, and animality in this life. In this closing passage, the Daishonin recounts just how perilous was Sage Nichimyo's journey to Sado. No doubt, Sage Nichimyo, seeing how well the Daishonin understood what she had been through, felt warmly accepted and supported. The journey must have been fraught with immense hardship and danger. An uprising had occurred in Kamakura, second column, page 97, and the situation throughout the land was unstable. Law and order had started to break down. Society was beginning to disintegrate. The difficulty of staying alive was beginning to get the better of people, acting peacefully toward one another. The situation throughout the land was unstable. There were bandits and pirates. And as the Daishonin puts it, the people are as bestial as dogs and tigers. They act like animals. They don't act like humans. The bonds linking the Daishonin and his brave disciples could not be broken by the harshest persecution. Through regular encouragement and guidance, sometimes face-to-face, sometimes through letters, the Daishonin built a realm of oneness of mentor and disciple that no obstacles or devilish functions could sever. Through the efforts of disciples who made his spirit their own, Nichiren Buddhism gradually began to take root and shine brightly in society. Among his many disciples were the honest and steadfast Shijo Kingo, the pure-hearted Abutsubo and his wife Senichi, the serious Toki Jonin, the Ikegami brothers and their wives who strove together in perfect unity, the young Nanja Tokimitsu whose father died and who carried on his mother's wishes, and of course, his many sincere, dedicated female disciples, including Sage Nichimyo. While facing their own unique struggles and writing their own unique dramas of victory, these disciples all dedicated their lives to Kosen Rufu and strove to realize the ideals of the Lotus Sutra in society. Through their experiences in faith and actual proof of victory based on striving alongside their mentor, the teaching of the mystic law spread from one person to another. Top of page 98, last page. The increasingly important mission of the SGI. The story of Sage Nichimyo's ardent spirit to seek the Daishonin's teachings reminds me of the sincere efforts of our members, especially our women's and young women's division members. They all, notice that he just singled out females. They all likewise seek the essence of the teaching with all of their beings. Help as many people as possible make a connection with Nichiren Buddhism and continue to work earnestly to enrich society and wisdom and the insight with wisdom and insights of Buddhism. Without the women's division and the young women's division, Soka Gakkai would not exist. The practice carried out by Sage Nichimyo, whom the Daishonin praised as the foremost votary of the Lotus, and the Daishonin makes the same point in his time. If it weren't for all of the support of the females that were practicing, that were chanting, his teaching would have never survived. The practice carried out by the sage Nichimyo, whom the Daishonin praised as the foremost votary of Lotus Sutra among the women of Japan, is nothing other than, it's the same as, the practice being carried out by SGI members everywhere. Today, youthful bodhisattvas of the earth are appearing around the world. Thank you, everybody. Embracing the Lotus Sutra's philosophy of respect for the dignity of life and spreading a great tide of humanism. This is indeed the time when, on a global scale, practitioners of the Lotus Sutra are emerging and contributing actively to their communities everywhere. Nichiren Daishonin must certainly be aware of this. The spring month of March has again arrived. Top of page 98, second column. It is a time when Mr. Toad's guidance and encouragement to the youth always come back to me with special vividness. He once encouraged a young woman from Japan's northeastern Tohoku region. When life in this troubled world is hard, we are forced to ask ourselves why we were born. I got to read that to Boogie. It is due to our karma from past existences that we were born in this world, and the mission to carry out Kosen Rufu in response to the Daishonen's will. It all comes down to whether we are aware of this or not. Whether or not we're aware of our mission because we have taken a vow. What we're seeing right now is the manifestation of having taken that vow. We encountered the Gohonzon. We're progressing. And on another occasion, he said the defining qualities of youth are passion and a contemplative mind. Once again, a contemplative mind, thinking deeply, pondering deeply, which is what we started with. A contemplative mind is a mind that is constantly seeking the truth at an ever deeper level, because there is no end to that depth, frankly. And on another occasion, he said the defining qualities of youth are passion and a contemplative mind, because we lose that as we grow older. As long as you possess these, you will never grow old, which is the truth, which is why I look so young. Even though...
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What will build the new age that all humanity longs for is young people seeking and studying Nichiren Buddhism, taking their place boldly on the grand stage of society, because this is all about all of you, young people becoming old people, and working toward establishing a network for peace and humanism. It says it right there. The mission of the SGI, which accords with the Buddha's will, is becoming increasingly important. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a member online has a question. Do you want to?
You want to answer the question?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody asked a question.
Yeah.
给你呀，
哦，他可以看看。
他看得到。你打花了，我看不清楚。
This is what? Okay, it just disappeared.
Oh, where is the?
It just disappeared.
这篇艺术性，这篇是中文，有吗？
等一下，我再找单给你。
秀的出。
哪里？他可能摸到了。
这里。
对。
然后
OK。
Can I touch your screen?
Yeah, I tried.
I gotta go pick up.
Oh, got it. Okay.
我们有
Just
做腊肉跟香肠，
just
所以
wanna
大
park
眼
a-
弄出来。
Just want to park a question here, please. Tom, you mentioned earlier that we are on the path to becoming a Buddha. This always gets me, as we are often reminded that we are Buddhas just as we are, and no lengthy practice is required. Can you please